Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, you'll do what we always do. We're going to touch on all the local teams, the New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers. We'll even try to talk a little college baseball tonight, talking about the Tulane Green Wave, UNO, ULL, and we'll see how deep we can go into college baseball. Also, we'll touch on LSU basketball as they are trying to get off that bubble and get their opportunity to get into the big dance. Joining me tonight, Sean Fazende of Fox 8 Sports, a guy that can talk it all. Sean, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Good to have you back, and glad to have you solo one-on-one. And
how about that?
I'm looking forward to the next hour because we're going to talk a lot of great local sports. And before we get started, man, tell the folks a little bit about what's going on over at Fox 8.
Well, we keep rolling. There's no off season for us. We have our normal sportscast at 4, 5, 9, and 10. We have our Sunday night show, The Final Play, at 10:30 every Sunday night. It's that time of year for me where I'm blogging away. After Further Review blog on fox8live.com. Just had an entry about an hour ago on my take on the Reggie Bush situation, which I'm sure you're going to want to get to at some point. Yeah, so we're covering everything, and it's the off season, which means there's you're not in game mode, but you're in storyline mode, and it's been hectic. I'll be honest with you. It's been real hectic.
It's been a weird offseason for the Saints, hasn't it? We were talking a little bit off camera about it. Really kind of quiet. Not a lot of information that's coming out of Airline Drive, unless, of course, you're one of the national correspondents. The only thing we've really heard of, there's been a couple of national interviews that Sean Payton has done, that Mickey Loomis has done, but for the most part, it's been fairly quiet. It's going to be interesting going forward, I think. I think this is going to remind a lot of people of 2006.
No doubt. I keep going back to the words, got too comfortable for Mickey Loomis at the Senior Bowl. He must have said it 3 or 4 different times in 3 or 4 different ways in the course of the 20-minute session we had with him. And the fact that you can't get anything out of the Saints organization right now. We finally got the confirmation on the coaching roster, if you will, months after it was initially reported, and no one could ever actually confirm the report. There is nothing this organization does is by accident. It's calculated, and I think it's this off season of being on the edge of your seat a little bit. We got a little too comfortable, so guess what? It's show me time, it's prove me time. So we're not going to just let you know what you have and what you don't have. We're going to just see where we are, and we'll let you have the information as it becomes available when we want it out there. Look, it's all calculated. That's what we end up with the media, but I'm sure the players and coaches kind of feel that as well. Like, there was a lot of coaches on staff that were curious if they were going to get extensions or if they were here, if they were going to be gone. And they finally got that information, given to them, and now the Saints move on with this offseason in a much more, I use the word uncomfortable situation, intentionally uncomfortable, because I don't think, I think as an organization they got a little too ahead of themselves last year. No,
they did, and I think honestly you got a lot of pride with Sean Payton. He wants to be able to prove that last year was an anomaly. That's not going to happen again, that they can reload this team. I think we go back to the draft when you and I were talking about the draft originally. I mean, this draft last year, they drafted for backups instead of going out there and really trying to really augment the lineup. With the exception of Brandon Cooks, everybody else was looked at as maybe a special teams guy. And maybe, again, when you look at it, that when they evaluated their roster, they didn't look at it with clean eyes.
That's it. And it was a little bit of organizational arrogance, quite frankly, to think that, quite frankly, we have a good enough team to where we are 1 or 2 pieces away. We signed Jairus Byrd. That's our guy. We drafted Brandon Cooks. He can make an immediate impact. And it's almost like they took the rest of the draft off because none of those guys really jumped out at you as, hey, this guy can be an immediate contributor. And it wasn't like it was something we had to figure out. It was something everyone pretty much knew right away, even the organization, which kind of goes to show you where they thought they were as an organization. Boy, were they wrong. And look, it goes to show they made a lot of moves, letting some people walk out the door, bringing some people in, and you can't just replace intangibles that easy. That's the lesson everyone learned. So here we are, back to square one with free agency approaching, the draft approaching. Totally different mindset. I think this team is going to go with much more diligence in regards to the character issue and drafting this year for players that they want to contribute right away, because you're not going to be a wholesale spender, if you will, in free agency. You're going to be able to get some guys. You're just not going to be able to spend $60, $70 million in the offseason.
Which leads us to where we are. You've done an evaluation of the cap over and over again. And again, you look at it, as always, the NFL cap rises a little bit. But the Saints, some $20 to $23 million over the cap now. Let's talk cap first. When I look at the cap, when I look at the salaries, they are top heavy. You know, when you look at it, you look at the whole roster. When you get past maybe the first 10 to 12 players, you start to get to guys that are making under $1 million, but pretty top heavy. Obviously, starting with Drew Brees. First of all, your thoughts on the cap and how they are going to maneuver themselves to get under that cap.
Well, contrary to what it looks, I guess, sexy on a headline. Saints $26 million, $23 million, whatever it is, the estimation is over the cap. They'll get a little assistance with that 1.7, and you get the rollover from last year. But when you add up the overage and you add up the roster bonuses for those 4 players, and Jimmy Graham, Junior Gillette, Jairus Byrd, and Curtis Lofton, it's almost the exact amount, okay? Which tells me that this team, that's exactly what they were accounting for. So, as I said, nothing happens by accident with this team. So those roster bonuses will get converted. You can even get more space if you convert the base salaries along with those roster bonuses. Yes. So that gets you down to even. Then you make some moves, you know, the possible pay cuts of Marcus Colston and or Jari Evans. Some cuts, guys like David Hawthorne, guys like Ben Grubbs, guys like Broderick Bunkley, possibly a guy like Raphael Bush or maybe even a Ben Watson, though I'm not completely sold on those guys. All of a sudden, you got $16 million in cap space right there. And maybe more, as I said, if you activate some of those base salaries into roster bonuses, or excuse me, into signing bonuses. So I think they're not going to have monopoly money to play with. It's not going to be unlimited, but I think you can realistically expect the Saints to create $20 million in cap space, which you can get yourself a decent free agent class and draft class with those kind of numbers.
Now, that $20 million in cap space, and I do agree with you, mechanisms are in place. They're looking at this 2, 3, 4 years down the line on what they're going to do in terms of who they're going to ultimately shift those bonuses, which again opens up and frees money under the cap. The only boomerang on that is right now Junior Gillette, and we'll get into that in just a little while. But let's talk about the interior of the offensive line first, because I think that when I look at priorities in this offseason, to me, they are 3, and I've said it all along. Interior of the offensive line, cornerback, and outside linebacker. When I say outside linebacker, some are saying defensive end, outside linebacker. I'm looking for an athletic linebacker, a linebacker that something they haven't had on this team in a long time, a guy that can run, a guy that again, when you look at the playoffs and you look at the linebackers on the final 4 teams, every single one of those teams had linebackers that could run. With the, again, emphasis to me being on the interior of the offensive line. With that said, your thoughts on Grubbs and Evans. We got a report earlier this week from Catherine Terrell that said the Saints were really looking just to cut ties with Jari Evans, which I didn't think would be a smart move because of his institutional knowledge. But it looks like now they're going to try to renegotiate a deal and keep him on. Grubbs, Evans, Colston, talk about those 3 players.
First off, of the 2 you mentioned along the interior of the offensive line, Grubbs, Evans, one of them has to go. To me, that's Grubbs. Doesn't have the organizational corporate equity, if you will. He's only been there since 2012, so 3 years. To me, did not perform well. I have not been a big Ben Grubbs guy since he got here. Jari Evans is an interesting one because of that $11 million cap number. He has to take some form of a pay cut. Now, in Colston's case, I think he'd be a little more willing because he's not going to get that on the open market. Jari Evans' case, he may have a little bit better negotiating stance because he's a Pro Bowler, generally viewed as the best in the game at his position, battled an injury last year, so he has to be willing to take that pay cut. Now, if he doesn't take the pay cut, he says, you know what, I'm not taking one. Then what do you do if you're the Saints? You cannot let a leader like that walk out the door. We saw what happened last year. That, to me, is a big question mark because if he does not take the pay cut and work with the Saints, maybe the Saints can give him another year on this deal, then you're in a little bit of a bind and you got to maybe go elsewhere because I just don't see them ultimately cutting Jari Evans. I could see it with Ben Grubbs, not with Jari Evans. Colston, I think, is willing to take a pay cut to come back.
You know, I agree with you, and I think that when you look at a guy on the tail end of his career, it's going to come down to what Evans wants. Does he want the final opportunity to make as much money as he can before he gets out the game? Or is he looking for a chance to win another ring and stay with one organization in his entire career? We don't know the mindset of Jari Evans right now. You know, most would say, man, I'm taking that $1 million. I'm going with that money because I can only make this money for so many years. But the Saints can set up a contract that would allow him to make the same type of money, but spread that over maybe a couple more seasons.
Yeah. And do you want to extend the guy that's, I think he's 31 right now,
yes.
That will be 32 at the start of the season. So, I mean, it's not an easy situation, but this is the price of success right here. I mean, these are good players that got great top of their respective positions in the NFL, and you got to pay them to keep them. And now you get to this point right now. You know, you mentioned, do I want to win another championship? There's no guarantee that's happening here in New Orleans.
That's true.
No guarantee. So maybe he keeps the money, which none of us can fault him for doing that at this stage of his life. He's never going to make this kind of money ever again. Plus, he may have a shot to win a title somewhere else in a different scenario. So, Jari Evans is really the one to watch, him and Colston both, because I think both have to. The Saints would prefer them to take pay cuts, and if they don't, then what do the Saints do?
866-3200 is the phone number. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, our guest here on Inside New Orleans Sports. Let's head to the phone lines. Alan is in Destrehan. Alan, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hello, Eric.
Hey, Alan, how are you?
Hey, has anybody asked, Sean Payton or Mickey Loomis about their philosophy as far as trading up in the draft? Because, quite frankly, under the Saints, it's really been a disaster. And I'll give you an example. Look at the Carolina Panthers. They picked right behind the Saints. If you look at the players that they picked last year, Kelvin Benjamin, Connie Ealy, Trey Turner, they probably could have all started for the Saints.
Oh, I definitely agree with you 100%. Sean, you're at camp constantly. Your thoughts on their philosophy? Is there a philosophy? And thank you for the phone call, Alan. Appreciate it.
Unless I'm missing something, they've never traded back. They traded up quite a few times. Obviously, last year we saw what happened in a wide receiver-rich class, by the way. It's interesting. Enter Jeff Ireland. And that's when they talk about fresh ideas, a guy like that to come in, a new perspective. I would be shocked if the Saints were to trade up again. But there's a little bit of an asterisk to this, and it has nothing to do with an Ireland, a Loomis, a Rick Ripers in the past. It's Sean Payton's DNA is to say, I want that guy. Let's go make the move. He is not afraid to make a bold move to go get the guy he wants. So a lot of times you're fighting against a guy that runs everything at an organization's true instincts to go up and get the guy. You got to be patient sometimes, and hopefully this is the year. At 13, the Saints might start with the misinformation now about one of those outside linebackers, because some of those guys are really good. Maybe you let them fall to 13.
Pretty deep at that.
Pretty deep at that outside linebacker position. You said at 13 you're in a good spot. I think this is the year you have to be patient. If anything else, given the holes you have in this roster and the youth that you need to replenish this roster, maybe even trade back in the second or third round to get yourself some more picks.
Sean, I'm with you. If there was ever a year where maybe, again, what you're looking for and the depth at the draft of the position you're looking for, this may be it, to be able to trade back. And maybe it's a little buyer's remorse from last year, knowing that, look, much like Alan just said, you look at that draft from Carolina, all those guys could have came in and fit into a Saints roster. You look at the receivers down that again, were making teams, and we knew this going into the draft. Second, third, fourth round guys that made impacts on teams this year. And of course, you package a pick to be able to go up and get a guy like Brandon Cooks. Maybe this is the year that you maybe drop back and say, you know what? I need extra picks. I need players that can come in and help me immediately at certain positions. Maybe this is one of those years.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if I'm not mistaken, they traded up with Arizona, right? And I think one of those receivers ended up being with that pick that the Arizona Cardinals got from the New Orleans Saints. So, look, I think it's worked for them in the past, that aggressive mentality on certain aspects of the operation, even at times in the draft. But maybe this year, new approach, fresh ideas. You can't do everything the same every year and expect the same exact success every single season.
Let's talk about, first of all, free agent priorities. To me, when we talk about the priorities, offensive line, cornerback, outside linebacker, to me, cornerback is a priority in free agency. I don't think that you can go in the draft and expect to get a guy that can come in the NFL and be an instant impact guy. There are those guys. Okay, whether that guy's going to be there at 13, I don't know. But there is a plethora of quarterbacks that are out there this year that could come in, maybe one or two, if the price is right, that immediately could strengthen that defensive backfield.
I think that is the one thing that I noticed throughout the playoffs, the Super Bowl. You have to have two shutdown corners. New England had it with Browner and Revis. Obviously, we know about the Legion of Boom. And unlike, as you said, you can't hope to get that guy in the draft. You just can't. You have to go out and not only spend some money, but you can't have a smoke and mirrors type deal. You have to go out and spend legitimate dollar to get a middle-class free agent. Now, I did a breakdown of this. To me, that's going to cost you between $5.5 and $7 million per year to get that guy. Saints can do that.
Yes.
They can afford that guy. Now, take out your Byron Maxwell. I think he's too high. Even a Darrelle Revis, who potentially could be a free agent, I think he's a little bit too high. Guys I like,
Go ahead.
Parrish Cox, San Francisco. Chris Culliver, San Francisco. Brandon Flowers is a little shorter and maybe out of the price range, but I like him as well. Even a Tremont Williams, if you get him on a 2-year deal, because he's not the aging guy like a Champ Bailey, but he's 32 years old, leadership, only missed 1 game in his career. So there's an opportunity this offseason to get yourself a decent corner. The problem is, I just happened to do a Google search of cornerbacks, top cornerbacks in free agency. There's about a list of about 6 or 7 teams that also need cornerbacks. So it's not the supply and demand is driving the price up for those guys.
Right, but you figured as much.
Yeah.
Which is again why you wonder if you are going to be the Saints. Are you a team that's gonna strike day one, or are you gonna be like the Saints have been in the past, with the exception of maybe Jarvis Byrd?
Yeah.
Sit back, let the I guess the economics kind of play itself out. See where these guys are going to land, and then maybe try to go get a guy.
See, that's why I think they go that middle tier, because they've had success.
Yes,
Keenan Lewis
true.
and Jabari Greer. I think you let the first wave go through. They're not going to get a Jarvis Byrd type signing. Get that bargain buy 3rd, 4th day of free agency.
Then would you agree that if you're looking for that athletic backer, whether it's going to be outside linebacker, a guy that can run, or the interior of the offensive line, that the draft is the place to go there?
Yes, I do, because I top tier pass rushers that hit free agency cost too much.
Yes.
So, and given those 4 guys that ran at the 40-yard dash to NFL Combine, my jaw dropped. Every single one of them. Dante Fowler, Bud Dupree, Vic Beasley, who's the guy I really like for the Saints at 13. There's a very good possibility one of those guys could fall. As I said, that's what I joked. Saints just thought that smoke screen now send out some bad information so their guy can fall to him at 13.
I happen to like an interior offensive line for the first time in a first round.
Yeah.
Normally the Saints like to go middle rounds on those guys, and they may stay true to form. But I mean, again, I've talked about Collins up at LSU, who looks like he's a nice fit because he's a versatile guy that can play multiple positions, tackle or guard. The kid from Penn State.
I like the guy from Iowa as well. He could be an interior. Brandon Scherf as well.
Scherf, right.
They'll all fall between that 9 and say 15 range. Lyle Collins can be a good tackle. He can be a great guard. I specifically watched him at the Senior Bowl.
I love him at guard.
He pushes forward so well for a guy coming out of college these days.
And again, look, the Saints, they develop their offensive line inside out.
That's it.
Different from other teams. So you need a stud. That's what you've had with Carl Nicks. That's what you had with Jari Evans. A little bit of a drop-off with a Ben Grubbs. If you can get a guy young and on the cheap with an opportunity to, again, excel over time, and then if you get into a pinch, maybe having to swing him outside. That's why I kind of like Collins. And again, believe me, folks, it has nothing to do with him being at LSU. We just had a chance to eyeball him a lot over the last few years.
There's no doubt about it. And look, as I mentioned, those outside linebackers, every team can't have enough of them. And if you got those guys that have top 10 measurables, they may go in the top 10. So you may not be able to get one of those guys at 13. So you may have to go to your next best need, which would be obviously be the interior of the offensive line. If one of those 2 guys are available, the kid from Iowa or Lyle Collins, maybe a good time to maybe buck the trend and go interior lineman first round.
Well, especially because, again, Drew Brees is getting older. He's taken more hits than he's taken in previous seasons. And it may be a little bit of a learning curve for a younger player. But, again, when you've got so much money tied into those guards right now, you maybe need a little relief and a little bit of youth. Because, again, look, we could talk about Jari Evans' wrist all we want. What I saw were 2 guys in Grubbs and Evans that their wheels were getting a little bit worn. They weren't as fast as they were in previous years.
Lost a lot of leverage. When they played, they didn't seem to have the same balance as they used to have.
So again, something has to happen there, and you got to get younger. Before we go to the phone lines, Tim Lolito, where does he fit in all this?
That's interesting because I think I don't know their true feeling on him throughout the season, because it sure seemed to me like he was the guy at center. Then all of a sudden, Goodwin comes in. Okay, we trust the veteran guy, but midway through the season, Jonathan Goodwin was struggling. I mean, struggling. So do they want to keep him as the utility guy, the swing backup center guard? Do they feel like he's a good enough starter? I actually liked Tim Lolito. I thought he played well at times in the game.
They won 2 games
exactly.
He started.
Exactly. So if he, to me, I don't have a problem with him starting at center and drafting a guard to go alongside that player. So I think Tim Lolito still is very much in the plan. It's just a matter of where does he fit in, because last year was a little surprising to me, because at some point Goodwin should have lost his job, and he never did.
He never did. Never did. To the phone lines we go, 866-3200. Kevin is in New Orleans. Kevin, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks for hanging.
Thank you.
Hey,
I
Kevin.
had a question. Earlier today, you mentioned on your show about that. I'm going with the Pelicans now. You mentioned that Monty Williams and Dale Jones were sitting ducks, and also you mentioned basically the Pelicans are not going to make the playoff. What makes you come to that conclusion?
Well, Kevin, again, if you look at the history of this team this season, losing 11 games to teams that are under 500, you look at the body of work of Monty Williams and Dell Demps. Monty being a 400 win coach, a 400% win coach over his 5-year tenure here. Injuries, you got to kind of throw that out. At this point, you look at it, it's kind of always been the thought that it's going to be playoffs or bust for this particular regime. In my opinion, again, I'm excited about what I'm seeing right now out of the way the bench is playing. But again, I think you got to look at the entire body of work when you're judging a Monty Williams and a Dell Demps. To me, again, hopefully, they're able to make a little bit of a run here, maybe get into that 8th seed. But I've always thought since the beginning of the season that it's playoffs or bust. But I will say this, and Sean, I want you to chime in here. I am pleasantly surprised that this team has not quit on Monty Williams.
And they like him. They trust him. He is a great one-on-one guy with the players. Every player that's ever played for him has left his program and felt like they were better than when they got there. That's his reputation as a player developer. The next 3 to 5 games are crucial because if you can stay afloat until Anthony Davis comes back, the Spurs, they've lost 4 straight. Oklahoma City is right there, and I think they're going to rise a little bit, but keep yourself in the conversation, and I see what happens. Now, is it going to be difficult? I do think it's going to be difficult to get into the playoffs, but they haven't quit. They've played well. This next stretch here, they've got to seize the moment.
Well, and look, the question I think goes to Mickey Loomis, Dennis Lauscha, the hierarchy at the front office right now is, are you going to concentrate on what has happened on this season alone, or because of the injuries, because of all the internal strife that they've had on this organization? Are you going to look at how they're going to finish, and is that going to be how you're going to evaluate them, or are you going to evaluate them on the entire body of work here in New Orleans? Right now, most coaches in the NBA, they don't last if they're under 500 for their tenure with an organization. But it is refreshing to see how they're playing right now, that he is able to motivate some of these guys who, again, some were at the end of the bench, and all of a sudden now they're playing pretty good basketball. It's a different basketball than they're playing than maybe they were earlier. And look, not many teams can win when you lose 3 of your first of your top 4 starters.
But here's the thing. 5 years in the NBA is still 5 years in the NBA. Fair or unfair?
Right.
So have Dell and Monty got a perfect hand, been dealt the perfect hand? Absolutely not. But they've had 5 years to kind of figure it out, deal with the breaks. I don't think they've been terrible. I think honestly, this is right where I thought they would be.
They've been a little snake bit.
I thought they have been.
Okay.
Sometimes bad luck can follow mediocre teams. Sometimes that happens.
Yes.
But I do think that they're fighting hard now, and Monty Williams is at least giving Mickey Loomis some food for thought. If they can finish out with some consistency, that's the problem all year. There's some consistency, and they're playing better at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. Then who knows what will happen? Let's just say the West is so crazy right now. Let's just say 48 wins doesn't get you in the playoffs. Then what? I mean, you're talking about a 16-win plus
There's no doubt.
difference. I mean, that's something to really consider.
No, it is. It is. But, again, Sean, there's only one other thing to consider as well. Season ticket renewals. And right now, Monty Williams is not a popular coach in New Orleans. He's just not. I mean, if you follow social media, you see it all the time. And Monty's got to do something over the next week, or next few weeks now, to be able to, again, maybe turn the tide here and maybe get the fan base, especially those diehard basketball aficionados who are out there who are following this team every single day, get them to be able to, again, support him. I think that's huge. I think they will be looking at the bottom line in terms of renewals of season tickets as well.
Look, as fair or unfair, I think it's playoffs. He stays, no playoffs. They're both out. And look, they were never their guys to begin with. They inherited both of them.
You're right there.
Let's just be.
Absolutely. Hunter is in Metairie. Hunter, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Hunter.
I know this is going to sound a little wild, but your haircut looks great.
Oh, well, you talking about Sean's haircut?
Listen, this is an early question. I freely admit this, but I asked you last year, Eric, and the two girls, those gorgeous girls, what are your projections for the Saints' win-loss record for this next season? And the second question is, in a perfect world where you could have whoever you wanted, which running back in the NFL do you think for the Saints, because every team's chemistry is different, which running back could turn the Saints' ground game around? I'll hang up.
Thanks, Hunter. Well, I tell you, it's so early to predict.
You know, I don't want to back away from that question, but I can't predict it. I really don't know what's going to happen with free agency or the draft. And the truth of the matter is they were a bad 7-9 team last year. So that's hard to really go with. As for its question, it's not so much the back, it's the mindset of the Saints with their running backs that I think you have a guy, Mark Ingram, that if you can get him at the right price, he's a guy that can run between 200 and 250 carries. I think he can be effective running back for this team. As far as some of the other big names out there, I don't know that you get any better than Mark Ingram, especially what you're willing to pay. So I think that's a guy that can help this team if they commit to one guy running 250-plus carries.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I wonder if that philosophy will change. Look, I'm probably going to shock you on the guy that I say because of the baggage that he brings to the table. But they were very close to having this guy on this roster. I'm talking about Marshawn Lynch. I mean, what he brings to the table, the physicality, everything that he has done for Seattle. If you remember, when Buffalo was shopping him, the Saints were very, very close to bringing him in, and how things could have changed there. In terms of their philosophy as well. If I had one back out there, he would probably be the guy that I would tag right now at this point.
Yeah, I mean.
To Don in Metairie. Don, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Don.
Don James, yeah. Yeah, I like them to get some new quarterbacks and get some running backs pretty good. We need some help.
Don, I'm with you. I think they're going to try to do that in free agency first, and then whatever they can't get in free agency, I guess they'll augment that with the draft. Thank you for the phone call. Looking forward, let's talk a little bit about Mark Ingram. Talk about where you think his price tag will be, and if ultimately you think he will resign.
Well, he's 25 years old, and he's coming off of a very good contract year. So he's in a better position than some of the other free agent running backs because he's only 25. His market value, though, only 1 year over 900 yards, to me is $3.5 to $4 million a season. If any team goes over that, he'll probably sign with that team. The Saints cannot go over $4 million a season. But I do think he has value to this roster if you are willing to get him at, say, a 4-year, $16 million contract with X amount guaranteed. So I think Mark Ingram, that's where he stands. The question is, a guy that's 25 that's had a decent year, is another team going to overpay for him, especially since he finally revealed his identity?
I think it comes down to philosophy as well. What are the Saints going to do? The Saints have kind of saved his career a bit because, again, it has been running back by committee, even though he has been injured. It took him a while to kind of figure out what it took to be an NFL running back. It never hurts to be in a contract year.
Ever.
I mean, that always helps you in terms of motivating you to be the best you can be. I don't know if they're going to be able to afford him, though, Sean, honestly, when you get on the open market. If that would happen, obviously at that point, everything kind of goes to Kyrie Robinson, but I wouldn't be surprised if, they go into the draft and maybe in one of the middle rounds go out there and get a running back.
It's possible, but I read an article the other day that DeMarco Murray, who is the class's running back class, is only going to get $6 million a season. So if he's only getting that, what does Mark Ingram get? So to me, between $3 and $4 million per season with, $6 million, say, guaranteed, I think you can bring him back and he has a role. But you have to do yourself a favor by signing a guy like that. You have to put him in the position to succeed. And for him, he's a 225, 250 carry guy per season. And I think I said this last time I was on your show. I mean, he really committed this offseason before this contract year to do better, to the point where he stopped taping up his cleats because his running style was kind of hurting his joints, and that was what was hurting his turf toe.
Yes.
I mean, he did everything possible to get himself ready to go. He was able to do that. So it does show some commitment, to being better.
Patience and vision is what I saw a difference in Mark Ingram this past season. He never allowed, the Saints are a rhythm offense, and he would never be patient with that hole, allow that hole to open up, hit that hole, be decisive. It's something he did this year that he hadn't done in previous years, and it made a huge difference for him. That and the fact that for the most part he stayed healthy, which he hasn't been able to do.
And he stayed healthy. He was able to avoid some of those soft tissue injuries, had the broken wrist.
Yes.
But and I thought more than anything else, almost out of necessity, the Saints had to pound him 20, 25, even 30 times in one game. And I think out of necessity, he revealed that I am this type of back. But the more times I get the rock, I can wear a defense down and I can become more effective.
But didn't we know that? I think most guys that cover this team, that watched him at the University of Alabama, thought he was that type of player and said that he will be better in his next stop than he is here. And finally, last year, he got a chance to really kind of showcase himself as the guy. Yeah,
and if everything's on the table for the Saints as far as we don't want to just keep doing the same exact thing over and over, that's an area where the offense can evolve. You can have a feature guy. So maybe they've learned learned simultaneously what he needs to do and what maybe the Saints offensively need to do to get the most out of their player.
Back to the phone lines we go, 866-3200 to Picayune and Charles. Charles, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling. Charles, you with us? Okay, Charles is gone. Let's take a break. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV, 6 p.m. with our live broadcast. You can check us out on our rebroadcast every Friday night on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette at 9 p.m. And, of course, here on WLAE TV at 10 p.m. Our guest tonight, Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, 866-3200 is the phone number. Also, we'll be talking New Orleans Pelicans. We'll talk LSU Tiger basketball and baseball. We'll hope to get to Tulane and UNO baseball as well. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Don't go anywhere.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports, our guest tonight. We will be taking a lot of phone calls, so if you want to get involved in the program, 866-3200 is the phone number. Sean, this is the time of year where, again, veteran guys who are making just maybe a little tad too much money, may have even lived up to the contract, maybe a team is a little cash-strapped, they start getting released. Your phone, like my phone, blew up yesterday with Detroit releasing Reggie Bush. There's been mixed reviews on the possibility of Reggie Bush coming to New Orleans. I'll quickly give you my take. Again, I said it on my radio show today. If the price is right, if you can get him for a decent price and an incentive-laden contract, I don't see any reason why Reggie Bush couldn't come back to New Orleans and be an effective player once again. Will he be the same guy he was in 06 to 09? No, probably not. But he will be a guy that has to be accounted for by the safety. He is a guy that can catch the ball at the backfield. I still believe 10 yards to the pylon, he's still one of the fastest players in the NFL. And again, he has some familiarity with the system here in New Orleans. And you know Sean Payton would like to be in a situation where he can have a Sproles-Bush type player on this roster. Sean, what's your take?
My take is simply this. If you look at the Saints offense last year, you watch the tape and you watch objectively and you say, what's wrong? It's just not flowing the way it was going, the way it used to. It's simple. They did not have a Darren Sproles, Reggie Bush, explosive, playmaking, receiving threat out of the backfield. That makes this offense what it was, okay? I laugh when people say, oh, they're taking away the deep ball on the Saints, that argument. Newsflash, they've been taking away the deep ball on the Saints since 2006. Now, the difference is you can play small ball and still be explosive when you have Reggie Bush and Darren Sproles. Now, is Reggie Bush the same player he was in 2006? Probably not, but don't tell me he can't catch the ball out of the backfield. That is the one thing he does not good. He does great. At this stage of his career, he's 30. You're getting closer and closer to the wall.
Matter of fact, going to be 30 on Monday.
Yeah, it's coming up as a running back. So Reggie has to have some self-awareness to realize I am a situational back. The best thing I do is catch the ball in the backfield. The best coach that ever got that out of me was Sean Payton, okay? I have to realize I'm not going to command $10, $12, $15 million on the open market. Those days are gone. You made your money.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Now, he knows the system. Saints can use his leadership. He is a very underrated locker room guy. He really is. So if the price is right, which that's always the case.
Give me a price.
I said 2 years, $3 million. So 1.5 a year, and you may get incentive laden or bonuses, whatever the case may be. So I don't understand the naysayers with this. To me, he fills a niche this offense desperately missed last year. Marcus Colston said it. Had no one to beat to win on 3rd and 6. No running back that can win on 3rd and 6 when you hit the check down. When you hit the check down and you make one cut, a 3-yard pass turn into a 25-yard gain, hey, not everybody can do that. The Saints sorely missed that last year. It wasn't Brandon Cooks. Okay, he's not that guy.
And he won't be that guy.
He's not that guy. It was supposed to be Travaris Cadet last year. He didn't turn out to be that guy.
And I don't think he's that guy.
He's not that guy. He's a restricted free agent. Probably need to let him walk. To me, Bush, Sproles, a cut above. And if you can get him for the price is right, why not?
Yeah, no,
why not?
It's a no-brainer, honestly.
Not only that, it doesn't prohibit you from signing other free agents.
No, it doesn't.
Because if you can create $20 million in cap space, you can still sign
them. If you're
them.
telling me $3 million over 2 years, an incentive-laden contract for a guy that, again, if he's averaging 11, 12 games a year, I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
No doubt about it.
Payton.
I mean, you could still, if you wanted to bring back Mark Ingram, sign your cornerback, and then fill in some other holes.
You probably still could do it all, right?
Do it all.
Yep. Jacoby Jones is another one that blew my phone up yesterday. Again, not the greatest receiver out there, but he is a threat on special teams. You look at this team, Jalen Saunders came in, gave him a little bit of a spark. He's still an unknown, not a big body of work here. But yet, Jacoby Jones, hometown guy. If you could get a Jacoby Jones for a hometown discount, much like you got with Keaton Lewis, he is a deep threat. He is a guy, much like Devery Henderson, that has the ability to be able to get deep if you need him as a decoy. But one thing you know, that when he lines up, whether it's in punt return or kickoff returns, the guy is going to be, has a chance to be a game breaker. Your thoughts on Jacoby Jones? Obviously, again, there's a big wish list, but if you can get him for a decent price.
Not as passionate about that one as I was about Reggie Bush, as you might be able to tell from my voice. But I like it. Nice player. I mean, how cheap are we going? Because I don't know that he's obviously, we all saw him at the Super Bowl here a couple of years back, and he's had some great plays in his career. Can still blow the top off of defense.
He'll never see that type of money again, though.
But he'll never see that type of money. The Saints could use a receiver. I don't know that it's the greatest need that people have made it out to be, because I think there's some. I would prefer a Bush-type player over a Jacoby Jones-type player. However, he has value, and again, if you can get him at the right price, the Saints haven't had a kick returner really since Darren Sproles.
That's right.
So,
no,
I mean, that's really where he would obviously fulfill a role on this team. So, I like it. I don't love it. Let's put it that way.
And you may get a cheaper alternative in the draft, or again, even with Saunders. But it is one caveat to this: the hometown discount.
That's
the
it.
Keenan Lewis hometown discount, which may be interesting to see. Let's head back to the phone lines: 866-3200. Back to Picayune and Charles. Charles, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Charles,
yes.
Hey, Charles, how you doing today?
Eric, Sean?
How you doing?
I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but Atlanta Falcons, I see where they got an 8th or a 9th pick in the draft. And I was wondering what kind of deal they made, because they were in the playoffs, weren't they? They're ahead of the Saints. And they already got a good linebacker, but they got them down. National news is putting them picking Beasley. So I don't know where the Saints are going to end up, but maybe you can answer that question. How did they get in the top 10 to pick a draft choice ahead of the Saints when they were in the playoffs?
They weren't in the playoffs.
Charles, they were not in the playoffs this year, and they actually ended up behind
with a worse record than the Saints, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they had
6 and
6 and 10. Yeah, 6 and 10. 6 and 10.
But they crushed the Saints' dreams of the NFC South.
Did.
So that's what people are thinking of.
That's what you're thinking.
That was their playoff, I guess.
That was their playoff game. I said it when it went down at the end of the season. You look at now Atlanta going ahead of the Saints. Obviously, it hurts them, but it's really weird. You look at the needs of the Atlanta Falcons; they almost mirror the needs of the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at these draft boards and who they're looking at, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. It would be kind of insult to injury if ultimately Saints were looking at certain players and they end up in the ATL.
Yeah, I mean, it It will show, I guess, maybe the state of the franchise or money, what have you. But look, Atlanta, they're in the NFC South, but I still think the Saints can come back and still be the same Saints with Atlanta in years to come.
I would agree. They own Atlanta, except for when they needed it last year. Uptown and Peter. Peter, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Thank you, Eric, for taking my call.
Thank you for calling.
I want to talk, follow up what you all said about Monty Williams. I'm a former season ticket holder, and it struck me, you talk about inconsistency, and usually you think of that from game to game. Mm-hmm. But how many games over the course of Monty Williams have the Pelicans and then the Hornets had a lead at the half and come back and failed to play the third quarter, or had a lead going into the last quarter and failed to play the last quarter? That happens so many times. You cannot count that high. I can promise you. And you talk about inconsistency, that's coaching. That's absolutely coaching. So that's overlooked. I mean, I don't know how many more, if the Pelicans would have played a complete game, mm-hmm. or the Hornets, they would have won a whole bunch more games. And I'll make one more point, because sure. I remember Bradley Hanwerger on your show some months ago saying that Dell Demps was playing fantasy basketball,
yes, I do remember
with
that.
A real team.
Yes.
And that's absolutely true, because some of the moves he made, just for the sake of making mm-hmm. moves, had just been outrageous. And so thank you for taking the call, Peter, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for calling. It's not unusual to hear what Peter just said.
No, you're right. I think he represents the majority of Pelicans fans out there.
I agree with you. And I think that will go a long way,
no doubt,
in whether these two return. Now, I will say this. When you look at this past season and you look at kind of remaking this roster on the run, first of all, I think there's been a disconnect between Monty Williams and Dell Demps.
I think that's
in terms of the type of players Monty needs to play his system. They've been very, very guard heavy, and that's one of the reasons why Bradley made the comment that it seems like fantasy basketball. But I will say this season, he's been able to rebuild the roster kind of on the run. Dante Cunningham didn't cost you a thing. He was out there. You look at Quincy Pondexter, again, a throw-in on a multi-team deal. And then now Norris Cole coming in.
I got to give him credit for those.
Three guys that now immediately come in and become leaders on this team, which is very unusual when you talk about a team that has had the majority of their players, at least for a couple seasons, playing together. These guys have come in and made an instant impact. So I will give him credit on these last few moves.
That's it. That's I think there's a fundamental theme here, and you're starting to see over the last 5 years the growing pains, if you will, of a first-time head coach and a first-time GM being put together. There is clearly a disconnect at times.
They learned on the job.
And they're learning on the job. That's what you get when you get first-timers at the respective positions. So, look, I think Dell's made some great moves. I really has, but I think he's made some bad moves as well. And I think to get Norris Cole, who I thought was a desperation move just to get a backup point guard, now all of a sudden helping lead your team, a Quincy Pondexter that can finally guard a three, a Dante Cunningham that gives you some flexibility between the 3 and the 4. Look, those are legitimate NBA players that right now, they didn't have them on this roster, they would not be in this, at least in the playoff discussion.
And I think that right now, especially when you start talking about the backups on this team, I think Monty Williams has reached those backups, kind of going back into his time in the NBA. You know, Monty was a journeyman as well. And again, a lot of these guys are playing for their jobs here in New Orleans. So, look, they're playing together. They're sharing the basketball. Are they as talented as maybe the teams they're playing against? Maybe not. But yet they have some talent on the team. All of a sudden, you brought in some guys that have brought a different pedigree, especially when you start talking about Norris Cole, who obviously has 2 rings. You know, if you're especially a young player, you're going to listen to that. I think it's interesting that they've been able to put these 3 games back to back. But as we spoke about a little bit earlier, there's a stretch here right now where again, they're playing teams that are sub 500, that are out of the playoffs, that if you're trying to be able to get to that 8th seed, this is where you got to win, with or without your top players. It'll be interesting to see, again, how they perform going forward, because as Peter said, there are lapses. And one of the things that really just really gets me upset when I'm watching the game is these lapses will happen, and Monty's inability to be able to feel those lapses, see them coming, call timeout, and stymie those lapses.
It's so funny. This year, the one thing that has been consistent, at least from what I've been able to watch and kind of observe, don't even watch the game. Check the box score at the end of the game. If you see they out-assist their opponent,
yes,
they usually win. They move the basketball, and for whatever reason, they just cannot do that every single night. They can't hang their hat on it, so they're not great at any one thing. They seem to be good sometimes, bad sometimes. And look, I thought he was right. Inconsistency does reflect coaching, but now you're to the point now where your top dogs are out. So now you have to bring it every night, because it's the only way you're going to have a chance. And maybe that's what we're seeing with this 3-game win streak, and a very good possibility that they can get 4 and maybe even 5, because they have to go to, obviously, Denver on Sunday night.
Well, honestly, their jobs depend on it.
That's it.
I mean, it really does, because I think that they're probably, to get this city excited about basketball again, they're probably going to have to make a splash in the offseason. Now, does that mean going out and making a splash at the general manager position or at the coaching position? I don't know. But again, I think the one thing that we have to watch going forward is, and I've said this all along, it's a superstar league. How does the big dog on this team, the alpha dog, Anthony Davis, feel about Monty Williams? And I think that's the key going forward on the future of Monty Williams here with this team.
Well, look, I think they have a good relationship. I really do. But I don't think Anthony Davis is naive enough to think that's the only coach I can play for. That's the only coach that's going to bring the best out of me. So I don't know that that's as big a worry to me as maybe some others, unless there's some deep connection that we don't know about, that maybe he really just wants to play for Monty Williams and would take it as an insult if he were to get fired, a la Chris Paul with Byron Scott.
Yeah.
So it's something to really watch, but I don't know that first off, I think he's here past his rookie contract, at least for one more contract. And, but thirdly, I think him and Monty get along, but if a new regime came in, they're going to build around Anthony regardless.
Absolutely.
So I think I'm not so sure about that one, because I think Anthony Davis will be fine.
And I think injuries is no longer an excuse, Sean.
No.
I think that has sailed. I think that excuse has sailed at this point. Chris is uptown. Chris, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, I think we need another coach for the Pelicans.
One more time, Chris. I'm sorry.
Monty Williams must go.
Monty Williams has got to go? Chris, thank you for the phone call. You are, again, this is what I get on my radio show. This is what I get when folks email me, social media. There is a lot of fans out here that believe that Monty Williams has kind of run his course here in New Orleans.
I had some fun with it about, it was right after the 4-game win streak. I sent out a tweet saying, hey, where have all the hashtag Fire Monties gone? Yeah. Oh, they responded in no time. Oh, no. We're still here was a popular response, and as we can see clearly by the calls we've gotten and the response we've gotten, they're still there.
And you can't tell me they're not gauging that on Airline Drive. It's about selling tickets at the end of the day.
They know.
Hayward is in New Orleans. Hayward, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, how you doing? Love your show, man.
Thank you, my man.
Can't wait on Thursday on my lunchtime to catch the show. Hey, Sean, I got a question for you.
Yep.
2 things. If they talk about Reggie Bush, if he did come back, what you going to do? My question is, what you going to do with the running back that we have?
Pierre Thomas?
And Dez Bryant is going to be a free agent. What's the problem with the Saints getting Dez Bryant? Is it a big deal? Would it be too much money, or he'll fit? And now he'll fit for us. So then back to Reggie Bush, what are they going to do with Mark Ingram? So that's my question to you. And I always read the comment, man. It's good.
Thank you, Hayward.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
We talked about it in the green room. Go ahead.
Look, I don't think having Reggie Bush takes away from even putting Mark Ingram as your feature role. Get him 15. He's not going to ever be a 30-carry a game guy, nor should he be. But 15 to 20 touches for Mark Ingram, 4 to 5 catches for Reggie Bush. This makes your offense more complete.
Absolutely.
I think he fits in perfectly. And I think the guy to go is Travaris Cadet, because I think you can keep Kyrie Robinson on the team as well.
And I think you can also keep Pierre Thomas on this team.
Pierre Thomas as well. They've always had that thunder and lightning kind of screen check down guy. You feel, Pierre Thomas is kind of the timing guy, breaks tackles. Reggie Bush is the explosive guy. And look, you hit him with the hammer with Mark Ingram. Hey, Y'all don't like? Well, hey, to me that works for me. I don't see what the big deal is with that.
Now, Des Bryant,
he's not the price range. It's not
the price range.
It's not happening. Plus, he may get franchised. So, depending on what happened with the Walmart video.
Daniel is uptown. Daniel, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Yes, got a question. So, if Norris Cole coming to the Pelicans, do you think that releasing Drew Holiday would be a good decision and try and keep Norris Cole for next year? And second question, where has Omer Ashik been all season? Thank you.
Thanks for the phone call. First of all, Norris Cole is under contract next year for $3 million. Okay. You've got 2 more years with Drew Holiday at about $11 million a year clip. They're not going to release Drew Holiday at this point. But again, I think it gives you a nice compliment if you can keep a Norris Cole. I've got to agree with the caller. I mean, on Omer Ashik, finally starting to see the player over the last couple of weeks that we saw at Chicago, a guy that, again, is getting double-doubles, but is also using is a space heater. I like the way he's playing right now. I don't know where he's been the entire season. You got a little problem with the way they utilize him.
Look, there was a play, and I watched it, and for the life of me, I can't recall the Pelicans game. He's not. He is a dirty player as it is, an ugly player, if you will. He does the dirty work, yes. You know. There was a play where he crashed the boards, tipped the ball out, and then the ball ended up back in the Pelicans' hand, and they made it 3. I thought to myself, that's the kind of second chance points that's the kind of plays you don't see that he brings because of his nonstop effort. Is he consistent? He hasn't been, because I have one thing, okay? Why a guy that has trouble catching the basketball, why is he constantly setting the high screen and roll? Why is he doing it? He sets the pick, he rolls to the goal, he gets the pass, he fumbles the ball. That's on Monty Williams. No, don't put him in that position. No, that's on Monty Williams right there.
I'm with you. You see it constantly. It's something that happens, and it maybe has led to the lack of progress that we've seen through him. But
now his numbers are down, but he does a lot of dirty work.
He does things that are unseen.
I think we all had a vision of. I think we all had a vision of what he would be, and I don't think any one of us would say that he's lived up to that vision, what we thought he would be. But I do think he's playing better now, and I think he's the type of guy. When playing to his level of, playing to his capabilities, I think he's the type of guy you need on your roster.
To the Garden District and Robert. Robert, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Robert. Okay, Robert is gone. I want to ask you about your. Robert is with us. Go ahead, Robert. Go ahead. Do we have him?
Yeah, I just kind of had a question for you guys about what do you think the Saints have to do more this season when it comes to trying to win home games? I mean, this season. We saw the big loss to the Ravens. We saw a loss to Carolina. What would you say has to be done to bolster our home games?
I would say that the number one thing, protect Drew Brees.
And I would say another thing, fast start. For whatever reason, slow starts, anxiety gets created inside that building, and it's just a bad vibe, man. Start fast start, however you want to say it. And I think a guy like Reggie Bush has helped in that regard. I'm just saying.
No, I think, again, when they got into tough situations at home, a lot of times it was because Drew Brees was running for his life.
That's it.
Protect Drew Brees. You're going to get that fast start. Yeah, they're going to score. Charles is in Mandeville. Charles, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, guys, what's the deal on Junior Gillette? Is he going to get that roster bonus or what?
Charles, thanks for the phone call. Great segue, my friend. Was going to ask you about that. Here's the interesting thing about this, and I've been this guy all along and said he's not going to be with this team this year. From the stuff that's gone off the field to what went on internally within the locker room, but the fact that the Kenner police have dropped the charges on him. Again, the NFLPA now has a leg up that if the Saints were to try to cut him when that roster bonus of $12.5 million comes due, what is it, on March the 10th, that they may have a grievance that they can file against the Saints. Sean, what's your take on that?
I really don't know. I don't know, and I don't mean to sit on the fence with that because I just don't have a strong take on Junior Gillette. Because I have never been given clarity as to this roster bonus, because I was told it's a guaranteed roster bonus, meaning if he were to get cut, somehow the guaranteed money is still available to him, which would obviously be a moot point. The only way you cut him is if you're going to get some of that guaranteed money back. So if they're not going to get that guaranteed money back, I think he's on this roster with the roster bonus conversion, and then you obviously do the signing bonus where you spread it out over the life of the contract. It is a complete toss-up with Junior Gillette at this time, because A, I don't have clarity on his contract, and B, I don't have clarity on what's going to happen with the situation.
Well, and again, if the charges would have still been pending through the Kenner Police Department, the Saints would have had a leg to stand on in terms of getting rid of him because, again, he broke the conduct clause of his contract. The NFL is still doing their investigation. Their investigation will go forward. Doesn't matter what the Kenner Police do one way or the other. But you're right, Sean. That ironclad, for a team that's cash-strapped, there's $23 million over the cap. Can you afford to just say, look, $12 million, I'm just going to throw it away?
No way.
When in essence, you had a plan all along, as you mentioned, to amortize that bonus over the life of the deal to be able to open up more capital.
That's it. So that, to me, it's either he's cut and they're getting the guaranteed money back, or he's on this roster and the roster bonus is converted. That's what it boils down to.
What does Jeff Ireland bring to this team?
Fresh look. I think he's here for the draft. That's what I think. And then he'll obviously help with player evaluations during the season. But I think they wanted a guy that's going to come in and give them a new, fresh perspective on the draft. Look, by no means was last year Rick Reiper's fault, but that was the biggest fall guy, if you will, for last season. They wanted a new set of eyes inside that room. And I think that's what Jeff Ireland is going to bring to this team, his ability to evaluate college prospects and give kind of a fresh perspective, a fresh take, if you will, on the draft.
What's your take on the coaching staff ballooning to 24 and players that are just a few years removed from their playing days?
I think there's a new approach. Want to get younger with some of the guys, a little bit close to the age of some of the guys, because clearly there was a disconnect between head coach, coaching staff, and players as that roster got younger. So want to get some more youth in there to relate more to some of today's athletes, if you will. And not only that, there was a division between, there's some coaches coming in that are younger than Drew Brees and Zach Strief and Jari Evans and those guys. And I do think you have that assistant linebackers coach. I think that's your linebackers coach, quite frankly. I think now, Joe Vick kind of backs off into that assistant head coach role 100%. That's for the Dennis Allen thing. Look, I'm just as curious as everyone else. I do think Dennis Allen has the personality to work with a guy like Rob Ryan because he's not a headstrong, gotta be kind of Greg Williams type, if you will. He's got a much more flexible personality. So I'll be curious to see how that works and curious to see who has the final call on defensive type situations because it's an interesting dynamic and it's one the Saints, I don't see any other dynamic like that in the NFL.
Got to ask you about what happened with LSU today. They no longer can go after early commitments. Because of the Matt Womack situation.
Huge.
Talk a little bit about that. We got about a minute or so left.
Overreach, as far as I'm concerned. That seems like an overly harsh penalty for somewhat of a technicality. You sign the guy to your financial aid agreement, he backs out of the commitment, then all of a sudden you're in violation?
You're in violation.
I mean, to me, that should be on the kid, not the institution. And even if there was a technical violation, 2 years only early enrollees.
2 years.
Quarterbacks like to get in early.
Yeah, exactly. You want a quarterback early. You need a quarterback early. No, I wonder about the rule because the rule penalizes the program.
Yeah.
And again, you're asking an early enrollee is like 17 years old to make a decision. And ultimately, with Womack now pulling out, they had unlimited contact that went over the prescribed contact that they should have had. And now the Tigers, again, lose 21 of 210 evaluation days and the inability to sign players to early for 2 years.
For 2 years. That is huge. I mean, that's a selling point for a lot of these guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. Final question. Tiger basketball make the tournament?
I think so. I think they can get. They've played well. I think they can get in the tournament.
I do as well. But again, they've got to go through Martin and Mickey.
Got to go through Martin. The depth is not there, but I think they can do it.
I think they can as well. Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports. Thanks so much for being with us. Thanks for all the phone calls tonight too. Really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in to Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night at 10 p.m. right here on WLAE TV. Also, a new time now on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. That's 9 p.m. each and every Friday night. You can catch me on the radio, 9:90 a.m. WGSO, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. weekdays. Also, remember, you can download the podcast or listen live at ericasher.com. And if you've missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, you can check those out at ericasher.com as well. Great guest tonight, Sean Fazende, Fox 8 Sports. Really enjoyed having him. Also want to thank the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, Philip Williamson, Amanda Lyons, and my director, William Hill. For Sean Fazende, I'm Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll catch you right back here next week, 6 o'clock, Thursday night. Have a great evening.